Good evening. Thank you very much for inviting us back here to present what you all authorized in December, meaning the initial proposal was to have the windows, and by default we had to include the EFS above the windows, and we also recommended including the roof. At the last meeting, you all directed us to reach back to MSBA to seek their approval to include the roof as part of this project. And the MSBA was willing to include the roof. And since then, the design team has been working very hard to include the whole package, meaning the windows, the soffit, the EFS soffit, and the roof. And we were able to turn around the estimates back to you all last week. Just for the new members who are here, if I can just quickly update the project team. The designer is represented by Raymond Design Associates, and we have Jean, Jeff, and Angela representing the design team. I am Sivasiva with ExpertCon, who are the owner's project manager for this project. Both RDA and ExpertCon, we have an excellent working relationship with MSBA, only based on how we've performed over the last 3 to 4 years. It's by putting together, this is the first time we're working together, but we've worked individually on other projects. One of my earlier projects was the Barnstable United Elementary School roof repair. Very similar to the concerns or the issues that you have today, where unfortunately or fortunately, Barnstable had a very, the initial estimate was based a little earlier. It was very low compared to the estimates that we prepared, but we were able to put together a robust plan, and we've delivered projects under budget. So it's a matter of being diligent in putting together a solid package, providing advice to the district on a workable schedule plan. It's not something that's drawn up in a nice picture that we try to sell to you guys, but more of a realistic work plan, very similar to what we did in December. We did come and advise you that by replacing the windows and working the soffit, we were encroaching into a roof system that was aged. So rather than doing the roof system along the perimeter of a very big building twice and facing leakage through the roof, we advised you to include the roof as part of this package. So similarly, we are here today to advise you on what is the best course of action going forward. Oops, my God. Sorry. So after the project team, the existing condition of the buildings, very similar to what we told you last time. It's a solidly well-maintained building. But as a 40-year-old building, it's got very, multiple aged and broken systems. And you had the windows replacement as part of the initial scope. And we added the EFS, and that by itself triggers the MAAB accessibility needs compliance, meaning we had to comply with the ADA requirements, which Jean and the team will talk a little more. So the soffits, as I explained a little earlier, has a significant interface with the roof along the entire perimeter of the building. This building has a very extensive perimeter. So at each interface, we had to coordinate the work of the roof with the soffit. And in sort of a layman's term, I think the best way to explain this is, if we had not included the roof with this package, every time we broke open the soffit to replace that little edge of roof, given that the roof is more than 28 years old, and we know there is leakage through the roofing system, at what point do we stop the repair? That's the reason why we advised the town at that time to include the roof as part of this package. This way, it gives you a robust building envelope. And I'll hand it over to Gene to go over the existing conditions and some of the design principles.
Good evening. My name is Gene Raymond. I'm with Raymond Design, and I was here with the Selectmen last time. So a few of these slides, the next few slides are going to be slides that you had seen before, but for the benefit of the Finance Committee and I guess the school committee was here before. We just wanted to roll through. Siva had mentioned that there were a number of systems on the building that were quote-unquote broken. So the existing windows, you can see in this picture in the upper left, I think anyone going through the school can see that many of the old steel frame windows are, the glazing is failing. The seals are broken on the insulated glass, and the windows are becoming clouded. The other issues are that the window frames themselves have started to, because of roof leaks, as it turns out, but there's been a lot of rust on the frames, and Siva had mentioned the soffits, which you can see out in the background here. These are what are called EFIS soffits, or the trade name is Drive-It. So it's a sheet of insulation, and then back when this building was constructed in 1976, it was a sheet of rigid insulation and then just kind of cover it up with a layer of stucco. That system is well known in the industry to have had a lot of failures. What they were doing was depending on this stucco surface to be the weather barrier and to keep any rain or moisture from getting into the building. And over time, that stucco surface is either broken by birds or rocks or cracks, and water gets into the system. And there's no way for the water to get out. It just goes into the building. And that's what you're experiencing for the vast majority of this school, which was built in 1976. Siva had mentioned that just by doing the window scope, which I think replacing all the windows and all the doors on the building, it's well over $3 million worth of work. And based on a $9 million plus or minus assessment for the building, the Architectural Access Board for the state, that's the handicap regulations, they require a building to be brought into full compliance, door hardware, bathrooms, stairs, elevators, everything, if the value of the work that you're going to do on a building is 30% or more of the assessed value. So again, just by doing the window project, not even the soffits or the roof, it triggers us to go in and see what's not in compliance with the Access Board regulations. We kind of held our breath, and we're pleasantly surprised, as it turned out. We went in and did a survey of the entire building and found really the major issue is there are certain bathrooms, many bathrooms, that either have a handicap fixture that's not meeting the correct dimensions, or the bathrooms in these various areas don't have handicap fixtures. So that seemed to be the biggest problem. We designed remedial designs for those areas and then had those priced up by a construction cost estimator. There were a few scattered things, like one drinking fountain had to be raised, and there were a few doors that didn't have proper clearances. But we did do a survey. We understand what would have to be done if you did the window project, and I'm going to say it was somewhere around $300,000 or $400,000 of additional work that would be added to the window project, and you would have to do it by code. The soffits that Siva touched on, and I kind of went into more detail. Your existing stucco soffits, you can see here where there's damage and water's getting into the system. Back in the fall, we did an extensive day of work down here, and we actually cut open the soffits. And this is the very thin 1-inch layer of insulation, and this is the stucco surface. As I said, any water that gets in behind this stucco has nowhere to go, and what it's doing is it's finding its way into the building. And this area here with the rust is actually the top of the steel window system. So we know the window sash themselves have failed. There's leaks inside the window, inside the building. Some of it's coming through the window system, but a lot of it's coming through these soffits, which is why the soffits got added into the scope of work wisely, because it wouldn't make any sense to fix the windows and still have leaks coming in from the soffits above. As part of that survey last October, we also came upon an issue with these, what they call, these are roof joists, and this is a seat where it sits down on a column. And it became obvious to us as we looked at them that they weren't welded. And given the current codes and even the new code is going to have higher wind load constraints, which when the wind blows, it can actually push up a roof. So as part of this survey and part of the scope of the work, there's about 135 places that we've estimated where we'd have to, when we take the soffits apart, come back in and actually weld those down. Right now, the joists are just sitting on the columns by gravity. The existing roof, as Siva mentioned, was also added to the scope of the work. And he mentioned a few times, this is an aerial view of the roof, and you can see between the perimeter and the courtyards, there is quite a bit of linear footage of roof edge. So when we're talking about coming from the roof edge, and this is the soffits below here, and when we replace the soffit, we'd be coming into the roof, and Siva's point to you was, where do you stop? You have a 28-year-old roof. Are you going to, replace the outer 2 feet of it all around the perimeter and just hope you get another 5 years out of it? That roof, when it went on, was probably warranted in 1988 for either 10 or maybe 15 years, and you've gotten 28 years of life out of it, probably with a few repairs along the way. But it's clearly at the end of really its usable life. And again, as part of this project, where we'd be cutting into it in so many different places, that was kind of the genesis of the recommendation to take a look at replacing the roof. So the project scope is replace the windows and the doors. The building committee has selected, and we concur, that aluminum impact-resistant windows are the way to go with this project. We could look at wood, we could look at fiberglass, but really in a commercial school setting, aluminum window frames are the best. When we say impact-resistant, this project, when it's permitted in 2018, will be under the next issue of the Massachusetts State Building Code. And that code is going to require, in the case of specific buildings in specific locations, and this is a school and it's located in Mashpee, it's going to be considered kind of an important building, and the code is going to require that the exterior glass not just be tempered glass, but it be more like a car windshield, where there's 2 layers of glass sandwiching a plastic or vinyl layer in between, so that if something's picked up on the site and the wind blows it and it strikes a window, there's much less chance that it's going to pierce the window and allow water damage or, damage to other people. So the windows and doors, I mentioned we're going to do accessibility upgrades to the toilet rooms and a few doors, replace the EFIS soffits, and we looked at a lot of different soffit systems with the building committee, and we settled back on EFIS, but we did a tremendous amount of research given the history of the product, and in the 2 decades since they've had problems with them, they've redone the entire system. So now, instead of assuming that the exterior stucco is going to be the weather barrier and is going to shed all the water, they have made provisions within the system for, you're welcome to pass it around, for if water gets into the system, that there are channels where water will drain out and drain down out of the building instead of getting into the building. On the roof replacement, the building committee looked at 4 different types, and the most cost-effective, but really the best from a safety standpoint and maintenance standpoint, is a black rubber roof. Sometimes you'll see PVC, white PVC roofs on commercial buildings. They're extremely slippery when they're wet, even if it's just a light layer of frost. So the black rubber roofs will heat up and accelerate snow melt. And if you're in a condition like we were a few winters ago and you have to get up and shovel the roof off, they're much more slip resistant. So I want to talk a little about if the town endorses and goes forward with this whole project. We did some statistics that when it's all said and done, between the surface area of the roof and the surface area of all the walls on the building, if you did the roof, the soffits, and all the windows, you would have replaced and have brand-new exterior surface on 86% of the building surface. The remainder is masonry, is brick, and the brick is in very good shape, and as part of this project, it would be cleaned, and control joints would be replaced with sealant. So, I mean, with a completely straight face, the town would end up with a building that has essentially, I want to say, a new exterior, and I'm totally comfortable saying that you'll have a service life of 40 years. The roof warranty itself is 30 years, but we know that roofs always can last longer than their warranties. They do. And clearly there are a lot, we're just familiar with a lot of projects where windows last 40 years, and we are very confident about the soffit system as well. I know construction costs on this project has been an issue just because of expectations and changes as we've gone through. And we can come back to any of these. We wanted to just identify 6 or 7 cost drivers. If you had done this project a few years ago, but under the current building code, or even this year, you would not have had to do that impact-resistant glass. But doing it when you're going to do it under the new code, that's about a $300,000 to $350,000 hit to the project. The 9th edition of the building code is also, it will benefit the town, but it's also requiring additional insulation. So we figure that is adding at least another $140,000 to the project. The structural repairs, I mentioned that we have to go back in and weld all those joist seats. And then with any of these projects that happen on public schools during the summer, you're always under the gun, so to speak. There's only so many people out there doing this kind of work in the public sector, and all these schools, or many schools, all want to have this stuff happen in the summer. So the fact that it's going to happen in the summer, makes it a little more expensive than it might otherwise be in a strict commercial application. The length of the project, as Siva will show you, is also not just during the summer. Given the scope of work, it's slated to start in April and run through November. So there'll be shoulder seasons in the spring and the fall when work will have to take place on a second shift basis after school is out. Also, because of the multiple trades, you're talking bathrooms, you're talking the soffits, you're talking the roof, the windows. There are multiple trades that are going to have to be coordinated, and for that reason, this project will have to be bid under a single general contractor. And that, if you were just doing the roof, you might just bid this project to a series of roofing contractors. But now the roof is only one of many trades on the job. This job will have to have a general contractor, and that comes with markups, and it costs, the cost of the general contractor to do business. And then finally, we and our cost estimators understand, it's unfortunate, but once you go over the bridge, there's a tendency on bidders to, mark up their work some more. And part of that is just the remoteness sometimes. Housing can be an issue, et cetera, et cetera. So with that, I'm going to just turn it back over to Siva and have him go kind of pick up on the same theme, but what the history of the project's been from a cost perspective.
Thank you, Gene. As sort of Gene, when he finished up on the cost drivers, the biggest cost component of this project budget is the construction cost estimate. So we'll just go through the construction cost estimate and how it evolved over the project scope growth. So initially, when we were tasked with just the windows and doors, the initial estimate from just the construction cost of work, it's not the total project cost. To this, you need to add the soft cost that make up the whole team. So this is just construction cost, what we contract with the contractor. So the windows and doors, if we were fortunate to just do that work without anything else, the most likely estimate would be around 3.8 million, given for the drawings that we have. That meets, as Gene explained, the 9th edition requirements and all that. And assuming construction happens in 2018. But to that, that triggers the ADA requirement. So for that component, you do have to add the ADA requirement upgrades, and that's 402,000, which now results in a 4.2 million construction estimate. We knew because of the presentation by Gene of the deficiencies with the EFS, you have to replace the EFS as part of the Windows repair. And that EFS replacement is about 670,000 in construction dollars. That results in a revised construction estimate of 4.9 million. And for the reasons that we explained along the perimeter, and your prudent step to include the roof at this time results in an add of 4.3 million, which results in a 9.2 million construction cost estimate. So this is, again, both RDA and we have independent estimators. We don't do estimating, and by law, the design team can't do estimating in-house. They need to hire an independent consultant to do these estimates. So even if you go tomorrow to the market and ask an estimator to put together an estimate for 2018, respecting public bidding laws, your estimate for this scope of work will land somewhere close to this. So assuming that this is the estimate, the next task, thank you. The next task is to put together a total budget sheet for the Mass School Building Authority. So the $9.18 million is the construction line item that you see in the middle of the page. The first row is the feasibility study that we've conducted since September to date, and that will go through till the middle of May when we get the next phase approved. The remaining OPM administration that takes us through the end of 2018, including an on-site clerk of work anytime a contractor is at site, is that amount of money, the $207,000. The next item for engineering is RDA taking what is schematic design level, or in the industry, we call it 30%, 25 to 30% design documents, take them through to 100% design documents, go through public bidding process, and thereafter, once the contractor gets on board, look at what, like RDA has shown a window with a frame. As soon as the contractor comes on board, he provides details of how the window is going to be fixed to the wall. These submittals, the design team needs to review these submittals for compliance with design intent and compliance with all the other factors that are required as part of public bidding laws. And so that amount is 423. Oh yeah, at the end of the project, when the contractor finishes the work, they'll provide marked up drawings to RDA, and RDA will help us close the project out as part of the MSBA and as part of the city's requirement. All that is included in that estimate. So of course, we talked about construction and miscellaneous. We do have hazardous material, we have caulking, all of that stuff that needs to be demoed and disposed. We may need to have testing agencies here to sort of prepare a pre-construction phase baseline, and during construction, monitor that none of the hazardous stuff is flying around the school building. And at the end of the project, they also look at all the manifests that go out of the school site, where they are disposed, and those manifests are checked to ensure compliance with the hazmat disposal requirements. So I just threw that number in just so that we are covered for that coverage. So this results in a little more than $10 million project budget. Again, that number is largely driven by the construction line item, which we are now estimating at $9.2 million. The goal is we market time the public bidding process, and we've just awarded 2 windows contracts, one in Watertown, one in Greenfield. And we lucked out by bidding the project between Thanksgiving and Christmas break last year. That's when subcontractors and general contractors are hungry for new work for the next year. And we lucked out with bids coming in 25 to 35% below the estimates. But again, we can't factor those numbers in the process now. So this is what the market is saying a reasonable bidder would include in his estimate when he puts a proposal together. The MSBA also allows project contingency for unforeseen conditions. For instance, if you open up this window, if like very similar to what Gene showed with the steel trusses, if this window is not tied properly to the building facade, that's an added cost to the contractor and to the project. And it is this contingency that will cover those little adds that we hope to minimize, but they are a reality in any construction project. So, and that's, MSBA allows that amount of contingency. And the desire or the hope with your approval is to submit the package to MSBA with a total project budget of 10.47 million. The MSBA has agreed to a 37.95% reimbursement, which means that the town's share of the total project budget at the end of the project would be 6.5 million. And it is our team, the teams and the contractor when he gets on board, one of the things that are beneficial with the MSBA school project system is anytime the town is out of pocket by 50,000 or more, has paid invoices for 50,000 or more, once a month, MSBA allows the team to submit a reimbursement package to MSBA. And generally, within 3 to 4 weeks, you'll see the bank, the check, the direct deposit come into the town's bank account. So it would be like, though you're at the end of the day, your town share is going to be 6.5, it is our goal to manage it in such a way that we get MSBA reimbursements timely so that your cash flow is well managed. And we've done that. Like if you talk to the town of Barnstable, they'll tell you that how we help them manage their cash flow. And we do that for every other school project. So with the town's share of 6.5 million, the town has already committed 172,000 for the feasibility phase. And the school committee, I believe, is contributing 500,000. So that leaves close to a little more than 5.8 million to be borrowed at the end of the project. Maximum, correct. Thank you. And yeah, so this is the repair schedule, and the green sort of bar going from left to right with the red dotted lines, that's today. So it is our desire to submit the package to MSBA by March 15th so that the MSBA board can consider this project on May 21st. And given that timeline, we request both the town and the MSBA to give us authorization to proceed to the remaining 70% of the design to be completed so that we can hit the bid, the sort of the sweet spot in construction bids between Thanksgiving and Christmas. And so that will allow the contractor to come on board sometime in January. Between January and March, he'll go with the school principal's permission, go measure the windows, go measure the doors, poke through the roof, look at insulation, look at all that stuff, submit drawings to RDA, and with their approval, we hope to get into a production slot for the windows sometime by the middle or end of February to meet going into production construction starting from early June. We've already told the school committee and the principal that we are going to be starting some work beginning in April, during the April break, in order to complete the project by the end of 2018. And it's a summer slammer. Gene explained, crossing the bridge, it's a premium. There's added premium during the summer months. So I take Thursdays and Fridays off if we want to spend the weekend in the Cape during the summer months. And the contractor will need to bring in truckload stuff to do this work. So all that needs to be incorporated, but we need to get the contractor on board in early January to ensure that we meet or beat the schedule, but also get the best contractors to bid, to give us a good bid for this project. So the immediate next steps are, we request your approval to go ahead with the MSBA submission. The town officials will need to sign the MSBA submission, and it is our desire to get this in before March 15th. And generally, by the middle of April, or the worst case, by the end of April, we'll know that it's a thumbs up from MSBA. They'll say, yep, your package looks good, everything is good. And it'll be voted on May 21st. And I believe your town meeting is on May 1st. So we are all synced in very well for this scope of project to go into construction in 2018. And I guess that's the last slide, isn't it? Yeah. And with that, thank you very much, and we'll open it up for questions.
Chairman, if I might. The Summer Slammer, how much does that add to the cost? And does, say a Western Mass location add an additional cost, such as the Cape does? And then the follow-up would be, on the contingency, how is that split up and dispersed and returned?
So just going into this, what I told our estimator is that to consider 1/3 of the labor to be at premium. Because we can't do this project in 8 weeks. This project can't be completed in 8 weeks. So either we need to work the weekends during the summer months, or we need to bug Principal Mary Kate and say, allow us in April, we'll come and do some work in the April break, we'll come every day, we'll come after 2:33 in the evenings, or we'll start Friday evening after 3 o'clock, go through the weekend, and have it ready Monday morning for school, which is all premium. So that's 1/3 of the labor premium is probably, it's reasonable to anticipate premium. And for contingencies, the MSBA is very strict on the evaluation, and we'll be very strict. So when the contractor submits a change order, we'll be very strict. And if it meets the test, we are reasonably confident that the MSBA will also accept it. But they may not reimburse it immediately, because they'll have to go through a board vote every time we get money out of contingency. So those payments may lag 2 or 3 months, but at the end of the day, they will pay, they do reimburse that the change order money that's drawn out of contingency.
And so the contractors charge a premium for coming to the Cape. Do they also charge a premium for going to the Berkshires or something like that as well?
Yes, we find that in the West. The Greenfield is up there on 91.
Yeah.
So yeah, we did see a premium there. Yep.
I was just going to say, our firm just completed a roof, windows, and heating system at Provincetown High School. So of course, again, it stretched out through the whole construction, through the whole school year because it was so big. But the majority of the work happened over the summer, and that project required double shifts. So the contractor was working 16 hours a day in the building. And then Jeff and I were involved with designing the new community center in Harwich probably 15 years ago. And that's where we learned about the Cape Premium, because our cost estimator didn't have that line item, and the estimates came in about 10% higher. And that's when we interviewed all the contractors, it was like, wow, it's on the Cape, it's very remote. And then we estimated Provincetown High School using that premium, and it came in right where it was supposed to be.
Thank you.
So it is a real factor.
David?
Yeah, you made a couple of representations that there's potential for some cost savings, given the timing of when you put things out for bid and other items. Were we to realize those cost savings, would those be shared on a prorated basis with, I think it's the MSBA grant, or would the full savings inure to the benefit of the town's portion? What's that, 6.5 million?
No, I think it will be prorated. So the MSBA does an audit. Every time we submit a reimbursement request, say if we do it every month, they go through a stringent audit to make sure that what is eligible, what is non-eligible. And when we sign the contract, like as soon as you guys approve this, and as soon as MSBA board approves this project on May 21, we lock in the next sheet as the total project budget. That's the 2-page that we sent. And when the contractor gets on board, we submit a budget change request based on the contractor's bid. That becomes locked in as the revised budget, and any savings are proportionally split out. Yep.
Other questions? Mike?
You mentioned this ethos soffit, and that product, or that has had a history of problems. Yet you're going back with the same company, which kind of makes me wonder, but I've seen stuff in the past where Weyerhaeuser had a problem with siding. Has that company been able to do anything from the standpoint of discounting the work that you're going to ask them to do going forward because of continued problems, if they're well-known, or is that?
They totally revamped the design of their system, where before there was no method for water to get out of the system if it got past the outside stucco. So believe me, we had a real issue with it as far as recommending it, and we did a tremendous amount of research. It is essentially a whole new system from the systems that were failing back in the 1970s and early 80s.
They made no accommodation.
No. It will be market price. I mean, they're a reliable, valid system now. And
Were you, gentlemen, was your firm part of the original firm to price out the windows? The original
Oh.
price estimate that we received?
on this project,
Yes.
well, we've been on this project since day one, so
Since September, but, sorry, Gene. Which estimate are you talking about?
I think the original project cost to replace the windows was somewhere, correct me if I'm wrong, 1.7 million or something along those lines was the first number we got. Oh,
So when we applied originally to the MSBA, and that was about a year ago that we submitted an application, we did not have an architect or an OPM on board at that time. So we had to submit to MSBA the request for a funding assistance, and at that time had to provide them with an estimate. So that number was my number. And it was based on looking on the MSBA website, window projects and the square footage. So it was strictly taking a square footage on another school project and dividing that by the dollar amount to come up with a per square foot cost for Mashpee's projects. We did not include the Liberty Wing at that time. So at the original application was only for the older part of the building. It did not include the Liberty Wing. once we, were accepted in the MSBA, it was decided that it made sense to do the entire school, not just the older portion. So that did increase the cost there, but that was a number that I had to come up with in order to submit to the MSBA originally.
Yeah, Sean.
I just have I have a quick question, because I was even thinking about it when we were doing it. Is that building is two different ages, and you've been using 40 years and 28 years for everything. There's a whole new section went up at a later date.
That's the 28-year-old section.
that- The whole roof was done at that point?
Yes.
Okay.
Catherine, am I mistaken that wasn't on our CIP, there also consideration of putting a new roof on the building a couple years out, and we've been moving this thing forward?
Yes.
Yes. So when we were before the board and the school committee back in December, that was one of the considerations. The roof was slated for, under CIP, for replacement in FY19. So it really, for that reason, made sense to move it forward as well.
So the roof aspect wasn't unforeseen. Marrying the two projects at the same time was the change in process. It wasn't, it wasn't a matter of saying, oh, we're going to do the windows, and then, oh, gee, look, we have a bad roof.
Correct.
We knew we had a bad roof.
Yes.
And we were planning on fixing it 2 years after, or a
Correct.
year after the windows anyway.
This accelerated the process.
Okay, so just brought it all together at this point. So, I'm sorry, did you have, yes,
I actually had a question.
please.
I thought it was interesting, because you just mentioned that, the new roof that you're planning to put on is gonna be a 30-year roof, but then you say the old roof is a 28-year roof. We've known the roof has been bad for how long? So if the old roof was bad, and we've known it's been bad for years, why do we not go back to the contract and say, why this roof not lasting?
Well, the roof is beyond the original warranty, so the roof is no longer warranted. When we prepare our CIP, we're not necessarily waiting for something to fail to add it to the CIP. Because the CIP is a 6-year plan, we're anticipating that in 30 years, we're going to have to replace a roof. So
Do we know how long the actual warranty is on the roof now?
it has expired. I'd have to go back. I wasn't around when that was originally constructed.
Didn't you say during your presentation, the expectation, you thought the roof warranty was 10 to 15 years?
Yeah, in the 1988, when that roof was repaired, typical warranties were 10-year warranties, manufacturer's warranties. Between 88 and the 90s, some of the manufacturers said, oh, we're great and we'll give you a 15-year warranty, but I'm sure there's no way it was longer than a 15-year warranty.
This isn't a home we're talking about here. We're talking about a school building.
I understand.
So 15 to 20-year roofs on a home, I understand, but not on a school building.
Well, just like I was talking about how the EFIS system had been improved, all the roofing manufacturers, whether it's PVC or rubber, are all offering 30-year warranties now. So, I've been in the business doing public work for 30 years, and I've seen it go from 10 to 15 to 20 to 30. And a lot of it, frankly, is just based on technology. They have better adhesives, they have thicker membranes, they have more quality control during installation. So, it's...
You're not replacing, if you replace the roof as you're planning, it's a better, thicker, more durable roof than what's up there, than what was put up there in
In 1988.
1988,
Yes,
right?
And it's much better.
So you're not replacing one for one, you're getting better product.
I still would like to know, though, what there must be some contract in place where someone that did the work we should have some paperwork on it either way, I would imagine. I'd still like to know what that is, if you don't mind. You don't have to know tonight. I'm just saying maybe you can inform us, because I would just like to know. Yeah, most definitely.
So, if I might, is the question before us tonight giving you authorization to submit the information you've gathered to date with the estimates associated with it, within the confines of your existing contract, the money that's already been set aside for this work, to the MSBA to stay on track with no additional exposure or cost to the town of taking that next step?
That is correct, because I think The package goes in by March 15th for the May 21st board meeting. The next step beyond that is MSBA board will send you a project funding agreement to the town. And that's when you have to go through, you need to certify at that time that the town is setting aside $10.5 million.
So we're not making an additional commitment until after town meeting theoretically approves the project and the town has funding.
That's correct.
That's the next step. So we're
That's
not
correct.
changing our exposure in any way to this project other than maintaining our place in line and being able to, if everything goes the way you outlined it, maintain access, should we choose to proceed, to the state funding on this schedule.
That is correct.
That's all tonight. Does that work?
That's what, yes, that's fine.
And I strongly recommend that we don't lose our place in line.
Understood. I was just trying to get a sense
Yep, that's
of
all
what,
that-
of the narrow, it's a relatively narrow question that we're being asked to decide tonight.
Absolutely.
Yes, yeah.
No more financial commitment at this
No more,
point.
no
That's
additional
fine.
commitment.
Yes.
Anybody have, John, do you have
I just
questions?
have a quick one, and, so with the possible any changes to the 2018 code, in the contingency, is that covered with any potential changes in the code?
Knowing that the project would be permitted in 2018 and knowing that the new code is going to come into effect sometime in the next 4 or 5 months, all the kind of upgrades, so to speak, that are included in the new code are included in our drawings and the cost estimate.
So you know the
So-
code, and you've already incorporated the code changes into the
that-
construction estimate.
That is
That's
correct.
what you're
That's,
getting at.
Yes.
that's what I was hoping.
At this
Okay.
time, right, all the code enforcement.
Yeah, just to add to Gene, this code edition, revision has been in the works for the last 12 to 18 months. So everybody in the industry knows it's going to come. They said it was going to hit January of this year. They haven't. They are saying that maybe July of this year. We'll know it when the state actually opens the book out. But it's imminent.
What's your assumption on hazardous waste materials? Did you price in to the construction that it's there and you need to dispose of it as hazardous, or is that built into contingency if you find it?
The amount that's there, we had professionals out there to test it. The roof was clean. What we saw, that the sealants were clean. Where we saw it is the interface of the floor tile to some of the windows. And that's our exposure of the hazardous materials. So we have allotted enough in our budget here to take care of those areas.
But that's built into the construction line item?
Yes, sir.
The 9.2, not as a contingency?
Correct. It's
Okay.
part of the base.
Are you saying there's asbestos tile in the building?
There may be some adhesives underneath some
The
of
black
tiles.
adhesive?
Yes.
Okay,
And so
okay.
when either one
But
is hot,
nonetheless-
you got to take it out.
Okay.
Never a good thing.
I know you probably have spoken to the superintendent principal on the subject, but I want to make sure we all have the same understanding that, do you think, with the previous project with schools, that there might be necessity for mobile classrooms? What's the noise factor, what's the disruption factor to the educational process?
We have had extensive discussions with Principal Mary Kate on the need to allow construction before the summer break and after Labor Day. We have not evaluated mobile classrooms. That's not included in this. And I think we are reasonably confident that we're going to start work during the April break. And as we can get classrooms freed up, we are pretty confident that whatever classrooms we take off, we can bring it back to school usage either the next day or the day after. It won't be an extended shutout period. If push comes to shove, the strategy would be to start it on a Friday afternoon during school session and work right through the weekend and turn the space back for operations on Monday. But come the day after school closes, we'll go at it full force.
If you have to go later, let's say you don't have it done by the school opening again, Is there going to be increase in costs because of the new working conditions you have to work on?
No, when we put the
By this-
sorry,
By the
See-
same token, is there any penalties if you don't get it done?
thank you. That's, when we put together the construction documents, we are going to lay out, we are going to sit with the principal and lay out classrooms that can be done before summer or after summer, areas that can be done after, and we're going to sort of demarcate core areas that have to be done by Labor Day. And the rest can be done later or before, but it will have a end date, either it's middle of October or early November, after which the contractor would be assessed damages for extended duration. There'll be no increase in cost.
Okay.
Is there any bonus for finishing sooner than the date?
The state does allow it now, but it's complicated.
Okay.
Yes, yeah, so we
All right.
won't go down that path.
One last question down FinCom, I believe.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks, Mike. I did have one more question, actually.
You two up.
Yeah, I heard so much about traffic coming back and forth with contractors. Why are we not using contractors from Cape Cod?
That's a very good question, because I think when we did the Barnstable roof repair, I think we had a contractor from close to, but it was outside the Cape. Given the size of the project, you may have subcontractors who are locally can support it, but the window, the roof, and the EFS may have to come from outside, because given the size of the project.
Well, I would personally like to see some contractors from the Cape if there's at all
So
possible.
this is going to go through a public procurement process. So this is an open bid.
Okay.
So as long as the contractor is DCAM certified
Okay.
for the particular work that they're performing, they are eligible to submit a bid.
Okay.
So it is an open bid.
Perfect, perfect.
Okay, Selectman O'Hara's got a couple
Thank you.
questions, and I think we might be in a position to take a vote.
Yeah, just on the construction aspect, very quickly. Aluminum versus any other type of window, vinyl, or is it accepted by the state? Or is it only aluminum that's accepted for this
No,
project?
I think if the district felt that another material was acceptable, that this, and as long as there was data to back it up as far as a 40-year life, that's what the state's interested. They want you to have what you want, but they also want to make sure that their investment is going to last, and you're not going to be back trying to do a project in.
That would have been part of my follow-up on that, is that, do we have any input on the windows that we're putting in our building and the EFS that we're putting on our building, rather than something other than?
Right. The EFS system has one of the better warranties now. A lot of the other panel systems we looked at were 10 years, which doesn't mean that they're not going to last longer than 10 years, but that's what the manufacturer's comfortable warranting. The EFS had a longer warranty. I believe it was up to 20 years. And then the aluminum windows are just very durable. You could look at, well, frankly, we don't recommend vinyl just because there isn't a long service history with them. And we've put in wood, aluminum-clad wood windows, but again, the aluminum just has such a track record of a long life that we just felt that we and the committee felt that was the best solution.
So I guess my question on the EFS is, whatever the warranty is now, do we have any input on what we're going to put on our building for our soffit material? If we choose something other than that with a plywood sheathing and a hardy board, a membrane, and then hardy plank on top of that, is that something that would be acceptable?
Well, I guess.
Just for
first-
further discussion, I mean, we still have opportunity to have some input onto what's going on and how it's going to be designed as
So,
a town.
Yes, there is
Okay,
there is
that's-
a building committee that has been working with with the OPM and the design team since they came on board in September. So there's representatives from the school department, the superintendent, the building principal, someone from the school committee. We have a representative from the planning and construction committee. We have the assistant town manager, myself, and the facilities supervisor. So there is a committee that has been involved with all of the decisions. The design team has presented different options, and the decisions for the materials that were presented tonight were made by that committee, that subcommittee. So that is the subcommittee's recommendation to go with the aluminum, to go with the EFS versus other materials that were presented to us. And that committee, subcommittee, will still be involved once the design continues, hopefully after all the various approvals in May.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right.
I got one other question, too.
Right.
1 second. What's our exposure if this project is voted down by the voters at town meeting?
The Mass School Building Authority accelerated repair projects are very popular in the town, in the state.
I just want to know what's our exposure.
Your exposure is
doesn't-
only 172,965.
And we've already paid that.
Yes. You haven't
So if-
paid it, you're committed that. Yeah,
We funded. So if
Yeah.
it doesn't go through, that's all we
No
owe.
exposure.
that's correct, yeah.
Okay.
That's correct. Sorry,
My
no,
question.
sorry, that's
Well,
correct. Yeah.
There's no exposure to that, there's exposure that comes from having a building with a leaking roof
Yes.
and no windows
Yes.
and price escalations.
No, but let me, if I may, let me add to that. I think
Financial.
the reason why I started off with the Mass School Building Authority accelerated repair projects are very popular. The backlog is significant. So you guys, not you guys, sorry, the town is very lucky to have got on this plan. And I think the town is even extremely fortunate that MSBA allowed to add the roof halfway through the process.
That's fine.
So I think if we don't hit the May 21st MSBA board vote,
Don't go past the close.
You're good, you answered
Okay,
the
thank you.
question. Don't speculate. Chris, and I think we're going to move on.
Very quickly, so when we're dealing with projects like this, ideally, we're talking about working over the summer, working at night, possibly during vacations, and there'll be no work done in an ideal situation during school hours. We all know that projects like this and this scale don't usually go to the ideal situation. In the event any work needs to be done in the school, the concern of mine since the beginning has always been security and, the kids being exposed while, work's being done in the building. Has there been any talks with whether it's DPW manpower? Because I know when we normally have 1 or 2 contractors come in, DPW will normally supervise. Are they going to have the manpower to do that, or what is the plan in the event that that happens?
can I just start off? Yeah. As part of the MSBA requirement, the OPM needs to have an on-site presence anytime the contractor is on board, working at the site. We will also implement CORI background check requirement for any trade person working during school hours. So we'll like at Barnstable, we had tags that every worker had to carry during school time. So that certified that he was CORI checked. So we will implement those things. And then for the DPW, I'll leave it to.
No, and that's exactly what I was going to say. And it's not just the MSBA process. If we were doing this project ourselves, we would be required by state law to have a clerk of the works on site. So that person would be overseeing the contractor, and as Siva said, all of the workers would be quarry checked. We would be in close communication with the school administration, and we've already talked about, if need be, isolating, providing a separation between where work may be happening and where students are, just to minimize any contact between the contractor and the students.
Perfect, appreciate it, thank you.
All right. I think we got everybody's questions satisfactorily answered for the evening?
So, I do have a question for the chair in regard to, what the Board of Selectmen will be doing as far as next steps with this. As I understand it, you have a placeholder for a warrant article surrounding this that you'll have to finalize sometime in the next 30 days.
Less than 30.
Less than 30 days.
26th of March.
At least with,
20
I
days.
believe a number, not subsequently a recommendation that will need to go with that to the.
Well, I think we have two things to do tonight. One is, in the context of this meeting, consider approving the MSBA submission of this package so that it can go before them by the 15th. Once we close this meeting, open our regular meeting, we have on the agenda discussion of the annual town meeting warrant where that space holder exists. We took no action on the inclusion of that article last week, pending the discussion today, and so we'll have a discussion about whether the majority of the board's comfortable putting it on for the annual town meeting, or whether we want to wait, or anyway, so we'll discuss it. So I'm going to break it up, because that's the way we have our meeting broken up tonight, so you might want to stick around for that part of the discussion. We don't have an enormous amount of business prior to the consideration of the warrant on the regular agenda. Okay?
It would just seem, in my opinion, that one is contingent upon taking action in regard to the second, whether or not you know what your recommendation will be to the town meeting.
I see the logic in that argument. Certainly, you know, like I said, there's the two things before. Approving the submission of the application has to happen tonight. We're not executing the final warrant tonight because we have a number of matters that are still pending, some refinement. So even if, you know, we put the article on, were we to do that tonight, we still wouldn't be executing the warrant until after their 15th. But I think if we were to tell them, we approve the submission, it's pending on the annual town meeting warrant, that's,
Depending upon the approval
right,
of the warrant.
right. So,
It's not pending upon submission of the article in the warrant.
yeah. So let's see where we get. I think we have the best chance to make the most progress by taking this in 2 steps tonight.
Mr. Chairman, have
Yes.
you figured out a funding schedule?
That's one of the problems.
That's one of the things we'll be talking about.
We have to take tonight's step because it stops in its track right there,
Right,
and everything
right.
else is
We need to
mute, so
continue
let's-
this.
We didn't get these numbers until Friday, so we haven't, you know, we've had what's been out in the general ether conversation, but you know, we haven't had a formal estimate until Friday, so no, we haven't come up with a funding scheme that supports this. Okay. So I would look for a motion from this board to authorize the submission of the Quashnet School windows, doors, and roof replacement project to the Mass School Building Authority for their consideration on their meeting March 15th.
So moved.
So I'll second that.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion on that?
Do we need to add to that 10,477,000?
No, it's in that packet.
It'll be
Yeah.
just, okay.
So, hearing no further discussion. Carol?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
And yes. Okay. So, Mr. Myers?